Syria will not be certified chemical weapons free, even if it meets a weekend deadline for handing over its arsenal. Well, this is according to Western officials backing a new investigation into the regime's use of poison gas. Up to 10 recent incidents, which activists and some experts say involve chlorine bombs in Syria, have been blamed on the regime. Our World Affairs correspondent Caroline Wyatt has more.
Thanks. Well, the US and others want an investigation into exactly what has happened in Syria. Chlorine is known as a chemical gas that can be lethal in high concentrations. It was first used in the trenches of the First World War in Ypres. It remains a frightening and potentially lethal weapon if used on the battlefield or against civilians. And some viewers may find the images in my report distressing. Scenes of panic. Syrian activists say this was what happened in Kfar Zaita as chlorine gas was used as a chemical weapon. They claim it was dropped from helicopters and improvised barrel bombs containing cylinders of gas over rebel-held areas. These distressing images then show the hospital where civilians were taken for treatment, including several children. The claim is that at least one child died as a result.
In the last 2 weeks, we've seen 10 separate uses of chlorine as a sort of improvised chemical weapon. Now, chlorine itself is not illegal under the Chemical Weapons Convention. However, if you use it to try and kill and maim people, it is. I personally think it's a brilliant ruse of war by the regime as they're about to lose their chemical stockpile out of Syria.
The Syrian government told the UN Security Council on Wednesday it hadn't used chlorine, and if there were such attacks, that they weren't carried out by the government. But reports from activists in Syria suggest chlorine was used. The first attack reported to have taken place in Kfar Zaita on the 11th of April. And over the following 10 days, up to 10 more attacks were reported in locations including Atshon in the same province and one site in the province of Idlib. The Syrian activists showing these canisters to the cameras are convinced that chlorine was used. Its chemical symbol as a gas is Cl2. Its use as a weapon by President Assad's government would be a clear breach of international law.
It is against the Chemical Weapons Convention. I think he's pretty convinced that the Western or international community are going to do nothing. I personally believe they can. What they need to do is tell civilians and rebels on the ground in Syria that this is a very low toxicity. It's very easy to see chlorine, very easy to avoid it, and by doing that its use will have less of an impact and will be less likely in future.
Syria's declared chemical weapon stocks are being taken away by ship. The Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons says it's removed 88% of the stockpile so far, but it says it may start a new investigation into the alleged use of chlorine as a weapon. Well, today, one of Assad's allies, Russia, termed the allegations false, calling them chemical hysteria and claiming they could be a pretext for military intervention in Syria. But for now, at least, there's no Western appetite for military intervention in a conflict that shows no sign of diminishing.